Hello everyone, welcome to our episode from the series Living and Working in, which today will be fully dedicated to South Korea. And we have the chance to have with us alumni living in Seoul, but also in Beijing. We have many exceptions, so it will be very, very funny, very interesting. As you may know, these webinars are a friendly space for dialogue among alumni and students with a focus on a particular country. And this particular webinar is the result of a cooperation with SeungPyo Carrières, and it takes place during the month of international careers at SeungPyo Carrières. You can find further details. I will put the link on the chat because there is a very rich program. And in particular, this week is the Asia Careers Week. So if you're interested in knowing more about opportunities in different countries in Asia, do not hesitate to visit SeungPyo Carrières website. So now I have the pleasure to introduce you to SeungPyo Hong, who graduated in 2013. He's a Korean lawyer, senior researcher at the EU Institute, and especially is honorary Secretary General of SeungPyo Alumni Korea. So SeungPyo, maybe you can please introduce yourself, but as well introduce the South Korea alumni chapter. What are your activities? What kind of alumni live and work in Korea? And yes, the floor is yours.
Sure. Well, thank you very much, Kenya, for organizing this amazing event with Paris and Seoul and Beijing in live. So I'm very happy to organize this session along with Yena and Oriana. But before beginning, I'd like to give you a general introduction about the SeungPyo Korea Alumni Association. So our association was officially recognized within the whole members of SeungPyo Alumni from 2022. However, our association had its first activities in the mid-90s amongst the alumni of Korean alumni of SeungPyo who attended the school in their 80s. So amongst those alumnus, we have our president who's within the banking sector of Korea. He's the president of the alumni, but at the same time, the president of the Federation of Banks of Korea. And we have a good mix between alumnus from public sector and private sector in general. We have about 250 members who are registered within our members list. And amongst the 250 people, I would say about 1/4 are of French origin, whereas 3/4 are of Korean origin. Our activities normally run throughout the whole course of the year. So we would normally begin our alumni meetings at the beginning of the year with starting from the spring season. So normally speaking, in the spring season, we try to organize an event in collaboration with the French embassy here in Korea to welcome new members or to meet up with the old and friendly faces in Korea, and towards and alongside the year, we also try to organize in every summer garden party, also with the association, either with the French embassy or some exclusive places around Seoul normally. And we normally also finish up the whole season with a Christmas or end of the year meeting. In Korea, we call it 막년회 or 송년회, which means that it's an event to send off a good year that we had together. So those are the main activities, social activities of SeungPyo Korea alumni. But alongside the social events, we also try to promote anything that's related to building a business community or a professional or friendship community of French-speaking alumni here in Seoul and Korea. And we normally do have the support of the French embassy, as I told you before. So the last event that was organized at the French embassy, we organized it alongside with the participation of HEC or INSEAD and ESSEC, and the whole organization was supported by the French embassy with the participation of Son Excellence, Monsieur Philippe Lefort, l'ambassadeur de France en Corée. So without further ado, after this brief introduction of SeungPyo Alumni Korea, I'd like to introduce myself. So as Camilla thankfully noticed, I'm a graduate of SeungPyo. I did it from the first year throughout the whole fifth year in between Le Havre and Paris. And I'm now a practicing attorney in South Korea, but majorly specialized in connecting Korean or European businesses in either directions. So I would say that my clients include not only clients from the public sector, such as a ministry in either Korea or sometimes in other European states, to private sector clients. So that's my professional work as a lawyer, but at the same time, I do also perform a lot of researches in the fields of international relations or international law. So I'd say that those are the fields of specialties that I practice at the moment. And besides myself, I'd like to also introduce Yena Lee and Oriane. I believe that they are from the same promo, 2014, so a year after me. Starting with Yena. Yena is a Asia correspondent. She spends her time between here in Seoul and Beijing, representing France 24 in the East Asian issues. And she's been a professional journalist for many, many years, as far as I remember. And she's of Korean origin, and she did her studies at SeungPyo. Oriane Lemaire, she works at the French Korean Chamber of Commerce and Industry, FKCC, which is one of the arms of CCI, from France to abroad in Korea. She's a PR and communication director at the FKCCI, and it's been 9 years since she has lived in Seoul with us, and she's of French origin. So for those who should have an interest of coming to South Korea for professional or for any personal reasons, I believe that Oriane would be able to provide you with ample examples or ample case studies of all the amazing contexts that she may have had over her 9 years of stay here in Korea. So without further ado, after introducing the speakers, I'd like to I'd like to begin the session with introductions of some questions that we may want to discuss within this session. So some ideas, and also I'd like to open up the floor to receive some ideas for any questions that you may have with regards to living in and working in Korea. So typically any questions such as why did you study in SeungPyo, or how's a work-life balance living in South Korea, or what will be the cost of living? So any detailed questions will be welcome throughout the whole session. And so first of all, maybe I should start with Yena. And what did you study in SeungPyo, and what sort of career decisions led you to pursue your career in your respective field, which is international journalism?
So hi everyone. SeungPyo got one detail wrong. Me and Oriane, we graduated in 2015. Slight detail. Well, I'll speak for myself. I studied at SeungPyo starting in Le Havre, where I did the undergrad course on Asian studies, which is the main reason why I wanted to live and work in Asia at some point in my career. I did that for 2 years. I studied abroad in Singapore for my 3A, and I did my master's in journalism and international relations at SIA in Paris. I lived and worked in Paris in total for 12 years, including 7 at the headquarters of my company, France 24, which is in Issy-les-Moulineaux. And then last year I moved to South Korea to become a foreign correspondent. And right now I'm based in Beijing. I decided to move to Korea first because of practical reasons. I didn't need a visa, and I wanted, and also for personal reasons, I wanted to spend some time with my family and my friends after the pandemic. So that was probably a very personal reason that not all of you can relate to, but it was one of the reasons I did travel back to Korea. And just being in the region, I think it was always a career goal of mine. I always wanted to do this. I wanted to try. It's something we studied at Sciences Po. I did it in undergrad and I did it again in master's when I was doing SIA. I specialized in Northeast Asia in that region. So I definitely wanted to have some practical, experiences from what I studied theoretically in school. So that is why I'm here.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your detailed answer. And sorry to share for the mistake, graduate of 2015. And same question goes to you, Oriane. Could you please tell us why you chose to study at Sciences Po, and if your studies at Sciences Po impacted your decision to come over to Korea and pursue your professional career?
Yeah, thank you, SeungPyo, for the nice introduction. And I'd like to follow up on what Yena said. We have some similar features in our path, career path, and decisions. Pretty same, we attended Le Havre, and for me, going to Korea was the logical choice after this educational path. But for me, Korea was a passion way before even Sciences Po. It started with a passion in cinema. I think relating to the culture is an important feature, especially as a French person. Living in Korea, it's such a foreign country. That it's hard to basically to integrate and really adapt to the country. But if you have knowledge of the language and interest, genuine interest in the country, it helps a lot. And I think it's actually fundamental in having an experience. So I had all of this. And so from the personal passion, I wanted to translate it into a professional career. What fascinated me in Korea is the way it economically developed in the span of 30 years, becoming one of the 10th world economy from being one of the least developed economy after the Korean War. And I wanted to know what's happening here. There's no natural resources. It's a small country, geographically speaking, with 50 million inhabitants. So I wanted to know what's happening here, that makes it shining all around the world with this Korean soft power, with this amazing chaebols who conquer the world. With all these on the geopolitical level, it's really interesting also to study Korea. With the relationship with North Korea and so on. So there are many aspects that attracted me here. I forgot the question, but just to say a little bit about me, I after Le Havre, I went as an exchange student to the Seoul National University. So I'm really grateful for Sciences Po to have this amazing network of top universities around the world. When I say to my fellow Koreans here that I studied 1 year in SNU, they are like, "Oh my God, you're the top top level. You must be so clever." And I'm trying to be modest, and I always tell them, like I'm an exchange student. It's easy for me because I had this amazing agreement, and we have basically a quota to fill for the universities. So I was like, no, it's not that big of a deal. But nonetheless, it's I think it was a big asset for me to study in such the top Korean university. And after that, I came back to Paris to attend the urban school where I graduated the master's governing the large metropolis. So the fact that all the courses was in English, and I had these Korean classes, like 6 hours of Korean classes a week, helped me a lot then to find then a job in Korea.
Well, thank you for sharing your experiences. By the way, 6 hours of Korean class is very intense. But it seems like for both of you, your regional interest and your regional concentration at SeungPyo sort of led you to come and work and also pursue your third year abroad here within the region. So Singapore for Yena's case and Seoul for Oyan's case. So I may say a couple of words myself as well, that I think it's important to emphasize that SeungPyo does have a lot of regional specialties when it comes to its curriculum. So, but I would have, since you mentioned about the culture aspect, Ariane, and I would have a couple of questions related to the culture aspects of Korea. So obviously, Korea has risen as a soft power recently. And one of the questions I'd like to ask you would be, how would it be if I may ask you this question, would you feel the difference of Korea's rise of cultural power within the 9 years of your stay here in Seoul? For instance, the impressions of your friends back in France about you staying in Seoul would it have changed over time? And also, Yena, since you perfectly are aware of the rise of the soft power within the world of journalism, would this rise of soft power of Korea over your career as a journalist have impacted you in either professional way or personal way in practicing your career? So,
should I start, Yena? Okay. Yeah, definitely the perception of Korea changed a lot in 10 years. When I first came here, we were not that many French. I think we are 10,000 French people currently staying in Korea, and 3,000 of them are long-term residents, and 7,000 of them are short-term tourists or short-term students. And actually the figure doubled in more than 10 years. So first it shows in the numbers. And second, in the number, like I've been at the chamber, I entered the chamber in 2015. And I'm still here. In the meantime, I attended the French embassy in Korea. I had the VIA, Volontariat International en Administration, in the energy department. But basically, from my time being at the chamber, I could see also more and more French people like coming to us, being interested in living in Korea, in working here. And basically, I receive about like 2 resumes per day for French people who wanted to come. So it's a lot, and I could see it increased over the years. And the same goes for also the perception actually of Korean people, of the foreigners coming. 10 years ago, I could see that people would notice me on the street because I have blue eyes and curly hairs, and I could see like people would look at me. I could feel that I was different. It's not in a bad way, but it's just like you know that you're different. And now actually I'm really melted in. We see more and more foreigners in here, and basically it's not a thing anymore to be foreigner in Korea. So I guess I feel maybe more at ease also because of that. So it goes both way, and yeah, I mean, we could see also with the recent successes of Parasite, or like all these big cultural successes of Korea. I can see that we have also a more varied interest from the foreign community towards Korea. It's not only K-pop, it's not only movies. Like there's a lot of cultural aspects that interest people here. So I think it's diversified and how to say, growing phenomenon.
Right. Thank you for your insight. And what about you, Yena?
For my field, I'm a journalist. It goes without saying that Korea has become a lot more important than before for international news outlets. A lot of media are in Korea right now, especially since China has started to close up. A lot of American media outlets have set up in Seoul, which is great. It means that international coverage, for me personally, as a Korean journalist, it means that international news outlets aren't just talking about North Korea, but they're also talking about South Korea, about the society, about the culture, about everything. So it is a great time to be in Korea as a journalist. And in general, and as Oriane was saying, I think more and more people are interested in the country, but this also means that for you guys who are interested in moving there and working there, there's a lot more competition as well. You won't be like that special person who studied in Paris anymore. There's a lot more people out there, so you have to like bring something to the table as well. And generally speaking, I'd say it helps if you speak the language a little bit, even just, a basic level, would be better than nothing. I mean, we can't all do 6 hours a week like Oriane, but if you can, it would be great.
In my line of work, I do participate in some cross-border transactions, and one of the things about cross-border transactions from Korean companies to abroad is that there has been a little trend with M&A activities or more economic or commercial activities between Korea and the EU, especially France, when it comes to cosmetics or any sectors that are related to cultural aspects of Korea, such as media or content creation companies. But in generally speaking, still South Korea is very much dependent, South Korean economy is very much dependent on either the US market or the Chinese market, so within the Asia Pacific region. So I would say that there would be a lot of opportunities for any European origins to come and explore the hidden connections and in the economic fields between Korea and EU in general. So that would be my little impression as a corporate lawyer. Right, but at the same time, Korea is very infamous for having a long hour at the office. Korea is one of the OECD countries that underlies a very high level of stress levels amongst its laborers and working environment. So what would your impression be of the work-life balance of South Korea? This goes out to Oriane first, probably, since she's had the luxury of experiencing the Korean working culture.
Yes, sure. Just before answering, I wanted to add something on the previous question. I wanted to add that since COVID, Korea, there's a new momentum, like also business-wise, because we see that because China had a huge lockdown, Hong Kong had its political turmoil, Singapore is actually starting to control immigration control, and it's harder for foreigners to come to Singapore. So we have a momentum in Korea to have more headquarters, and I see actually more and more French businessmen like coming from Hong Kong or Singapore, establishing in Korea. So I just wanted to add that there's this little momentum, and Korea, I think, has a very good image because it handled the COVID crisis so well. It was actually a model for the whole world. So it's a good point for the country. To answer the question on the work-life balance, so definitely you must not expect any 35 hours a week contract, 30 days of vacation with RTT and whatnot. Forget that. So the standard working contract here is 40 hours per week. We have currently a system that limits the work week time to 52 hours. And actually, this law is being revised to allow companies to ask their employee to work more than 52 hours per week, up to, I think, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, to 69, but with a limit over a quarter, a semester, or a year, a yearly limit. But actually, it's creating some backlashes from unions, labor unions, who say that actually it will benefit only the employer, and the government say that there would be more compensation in vacations. But actually, I read a survey recently. Out of 1,000 respondents, 30% of the respondents said that their boss refused to grant their vacation. It's illegal, but still, it's a practice that can be done. It's not the case I think, for the big companies or like the foreign invested companies in Korea. I guess, at least foreign invested companies in Korea, it's a bit more smooth. Basically, in my case, so I'm in the standard, I have 40 hours a week and 20 days of paid leave per year. And every 2 years of work experience, I have 1 more day of paid leave. Actually, 20 days is a lot. For a first year, I think when you start your contract here, I had it from the beginning. Actually, the standard is 15 days of paid leave. So in my case, I was a bit, let's say, well treated. But it's a fact that overtime happens a lot, but I think there's a shift since COVID, especially the MZ generation is asking more this work-life balance. They call it the Wallabel in here. And there's basically really a demand.
And
oh, sorry.
Known for his research, and he's also interested.
Oh, sorry, I think we got cut, but it was a question. What was I saying? Yeah, so there's this shift with the new generation. And the work market, the labor market here is pretty tense. Actually, it's hard for companies to recruit good talent. So if you have a good profile and you're competitive, I think companies tend to offer more advantageous packages because the labor market is tense. And companies have a hard time. There's a high turnover. I think the average turnover rate in Korea is pretty high. So companies, I think they try more and more to retain their talents and offer advantageous conditions. So I can see some improvement. Maybe not with this current government, which is more conservative and liberal, but let's see.
Can I just add to this, SeungPyo?
Sure.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, like, I've definitely seen over the years, just like Oriane said, like the generational change, like what was the cliche of like terrible working hours and terrible working conditions of like our parents' generation is not like that anymore if you are, you know, at a good company with a good job. And I think if, you know, usually if you've graduated from Sciences Po, I think most of us are going to end up in some kind of cadre kind of like level. So like the 69-hour work week doesn't apply to us, not really. That said, when you work in Paris, it's 35 heures, but actually, like if you're a cadre, it's never 35 heures. You always work more. Like it's pretty much the same, I think, in Seoul. When I see my friends working generally in big companies, it's not that bad. It's not, I think it's like when you're, you know, in your early 30s and you're working hard in a big corporation, everybody has pretty bad working hours. The difference is, I think, the holidays. You know, Rianne said she was lucky to have 20. I think in France, you have minimum 5 weeks. So that really is precious, something you might have to give up. But in general, when I see my friends in Korea working, you know, they come home at like 6:30, which I don't think is, you know, a tragedy.
Definitely. I think it's also very sector specific. For instance, in the legal sector, the norm will be that, you know, you'll be driven by the cab to go back home past midnight for the first couple of years. And then, as Yena said, it would the work-life balance would be better off as you receive more seniority. So, but in general, generally speaking, I'm in agreement with the observations made by Eliane and Yena. And big companies where there's a set of rules within the company to provide certain benefits for its employers. The work-life balance is treated as a very serious matter. But what some of my clients are also startup companies here in Korea. For them, especially in the fields of IT or anything that's related to, let's say, tech industry, I wouldn't say that the work-life balance is very much optimal compared to European countries. So, but at the same time, I'm talking about programmers, but probably wouldn't apply to our graduates of SeungPyo. Maybe yes, maybe not. So that's about work-life balance. What about the cost of living? Because as far as I remember, Seoul had a very affordable cost of living until I came back recently in Korea, late 2022, after having practiced in Paris and Luxembourg. Nowadays, my friends in Tokyo, another lawyer, tells me that the cost of living of Seoul has exceeded the cost of living in Tokyo. And I'm probably sure it goes without saying that Singapore and Seoul is pretty much comparable these days. So what would you say about the cost of living in Seoul?
Should I start? I don't know, like I don't go to Tokyo often, but you definitely feel the inflation since 10 years ago, like compared to 10 years ago. I think prices, like basically you go to a convenience store and you buy a kimbap, and 10 years ago it was 80 cents. Now it's like double. So you
Kimbap
can
is an
see it.
easy meal.
Yeah, yeah, the easy meal. Back when I was a broke student. But yeah, I think it mostly comes to housing. There's a housing bubble in Seoul, especially the capital, because it's half of the Korean population is located in the capital region. So it's really packed, and the real estate market is very highly heated. But I think the rent, in my case, actually, I'm in a shared house with two friends, and we really found a good price for our flat, and we share the expenses. So I think this would be my advice if you try to move to Korea. But still, I think the rent is lower than Paris. I mean, I'm in the central Korea, and I pay 400 euros per month for a room in a 80 square meters apartment. So I found a good deal. But again, yeah, if you speak a little bit Korean, if you're at ease in this environment, I think you can find a good deals. And some neighborhoods that actually have a good price quality ratio. In my case, I'm in Hapcheong, Hongdae. It's like a western central district, very well connected, and it's not that pricey compared to all the amenities we have. I would not recommend to look around areas like Gangnam, like the southeast, which is like it's like the newest neighborhood of Seoul, which was actually a former marécage, how do you say it? Waterland, whatever. I don't know what to say. I forgot. But I think you have to pick your neighborhoods wisely, and the cost of living is contrasted actually, very constructed depending on where you shop as well. You have still a lot of these traditional markets, like really small markets with grandmas selling vegetables on the streets and delicious food, and it's really still cheap. And it's exactly the reverse as Paris, where you have these fancy markets that are actually can be more pricey than the local Carrefour market. And here is exactly the reverse. The markets are really cheap, but if you go to a mall or to a Home Plus, like the big Carrefour, it will be very expensive there actually. So you just have to be smart in your spending patterns, but you can still live in a very affordable way in Korea.
Yeah, I'd agree with what Oriane said. The main budget would be housing. And you can't live without a house. So that's the big budget. Seoul as a city, I don't know if you guys have traveled there, is so much bigger than Paris. So I think the flat prices are pretty much similar, with the big difference being is you can be in Seoul and be really far away from anything you want to get to, which would be quite, dommage. Whereas in Paris, you can kind of live anywhere and anything is accessible because it's such a small city, which means in Seoul, you probably want to live in a cool area. So yeah, I think I had friends, a lot of foreign journalists in Seoul live near Itaewon, near like Haebangchon, HPC. And I think, for a couple to have a decent flat, they might pay like €1,000, which is slightly cheaper than in Paris, I'd say. Yeah, so that's definitely it. And grocery shopping in supermarkets, far more expensive than in Paris. As Oriane said, you'd have to find a tiny market, but if you don't live near one, you'd have to go to a supermarket, and supermarkets are really expensive. Like fruit and vegetable are really expensive. I really miss European fresh fruit and vegetable. That's all I have to say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one thing is like also with the energy crisis, be careful about really the insulation of the housing. Like the electricity and gas bills like double, tripled, quadrupled this winter. So really be careful when you pick your apartment, and especially, for example, this area that Yena mentioned, Haebangchon, Itaewon, has a lot of old houses which are very cheap rent, but some of them are renovated, some of them are not. So try to be careful on the details, because the non-renovated one, actually, they're called chutek. This is like kind of old housing that Koreans don't like, because they like to have this fancy apartment called officetel, which are pretty new. But yeah, be careful about that as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd like to say a couple of words about the cost of living. Yes, it is quite high compared to 10 years ago, as Ayant said. But one of the contrasting features from European cities is Seoul, where I live, is that Seoul is a very modern city and the infrastructure is quite amazing. For instance, you wouldn't have any difficulties purchasing anything at a convenience store past midnight, whereas in Paris or in other European cities, including Luxembourg and London, it could be quite inaccessible. So that sort of would be one of the compensating factors of the rise of cost of living. So essentially, you purchase within the package of services of living in South Korea this service called comfortness or security. So I guess that would be a good way to sort of close off the session about cost of living. So I'll have two more questions, and then I'd like to open up the floor to receive any questions from the participants. So two last questions. So one, what are your recommendations for someone willing to move to South Korea? And two, is Korean language needed for Korea here? And after that, please share some of your questions, either through chat or by opening up your microphone at any time.
Yeah, the Korean is, I think, a must. I think in most cases, even for your daily life here. I mean, there's still a lot of Koreans who don't speak English still. It's not true for the younger generation, but even though actually they spend a lot on education here and they have really good level in English, I think they don't dare to speak English. So there's this issue. And as soon as you say a word in Korean, it totally breaks the ice and people open up and it's really an icebreaker and very important. And as Yena said earlier, it's more and more competitive. So having a good level of Korean is an asset. In that case, actually, this is how I got my job at the embassy. Like, if I let me tell a little story. So I was an intern at the French Chamber, and then I saw this VIA offer at the energy department of the French embassy. They didn't specifically ask for Korean, but they could say that there would be some kind of market, energy market related research, and for that, Korean skills are very useful because a lot of contents are not available in English. And looking for contents in Korean, especially for market research or any information, it's really a plus to do it in Korean, to have up to date. If you go to any governmental website, statistical website, usually the English section is very scarce, and the Korean is like full on full news and stuff. So you miss like 80% of the content if you don't speak Korean. And when I did the interview at the French embassy, I got the job, and then my boss, my first meeting with him, he said, "You know why I hired you, Oriane?" I said, "No, why?" It's not because my former boss recommended me. He said, "Because you were the only one who didn't lie about your Korean level." And I really appreciate it, because everybody says they are level 4, level 5, and they are amazing at Korean, but they barely can speak. But actually trying hard and speaking a little bit makes a difference. So at least in my case, it did. I cannot say it will for all, but yeah.
So a word of recommendation, try to spend 6 hours per week to learn Korean. That really helps. How about you, Yena? Oh,
just to add, the most efficient way to learn actually I mean, the class of Sciences Po was a good introduction, but to be immersed in the country, and actually I did an intense course. So in the universities like Yonsei, SNU, you have those Korean language institute. You can apply for a trimester or more, so it's a bit costly. But I think with a gap year with Sciences Po, I think you can have a discount, 50% discount. I need to check, but I think I got a discount when I was an exchange student there. And this 20 hours a week intensive course, and it's really when I stepped up my level.
Yeah, what Oriane said, obviously, ideally you'd speak really good Korean like Oriane, you'd be at a really working level proficiency, but if you can't get there, don't lose hope. Like, you don't have to be a native level speaker to live and work in Korea. For many industries, I would say that if you go without knowing the basics, it's not good. I think it shows respect to know the basics of the language of the country you live in, and as Oriane said, like the day-to-day life, it's clearly very important. And ideally, yeah, even more than that, if you have time to improve your language, or you can do it sur place, like Oriane did as well. Just to move things along, SeungPyo also asked for recommendations. I think if you really want to try and do it, you just go to look for jobs. I remember my first internships I did in Korea, I found one of them using the Chamber of Commerce website and the list of French companies they had there, because I had a degree from Sciences Po and Korean companies don't generally know Sciences Po very well. So I knew I'd have more of an advantage looking at French companies based in Korea. And that's how I landed an internship back then. And otherwise, yeah, use your contacts and alumni. I guess that's why we're all here. So that's the end.
We have a question from Bianca saying that what are the best sites? Are there any websites to use when looking for jobs in South Korea as foreigners? That's the first question. And the second question, to which extent is it possible to find a job in a Korean company as a foreigner? Is working in a French company or a French embassy in Korea the main option, or is it possible to approach Korean companies outside the French frame? From Maya, I would, well, I don't have any website in specific, but Indeed is a job-seeking website that provides, and Ayant obviously, and Yena mentioned about the French Korean Chamber of Commerce. So moving on to the second question, for instance, I have a French Luxembourgish friend who's working at Samsung, and some Korean conglomerates do have a special division that's focused on external affairs or international global affairs, and they do hire intensively from good universities all around the world. So that's is an option to try to work within the Korean frame. In otherwise, any international companies, global consulting firms or auditing firms would naturally come to my mind when it comes to seeking more global and international workforces. And
I'd also add that if you want to work for a company that's not French or not linked to France, you most probably have to speak absolutely perfect English and probably very good Korean. Otherwise, it's impossible. Like, you're not going to get through the door. You're not going to get through the interview, HR interview, if you can't speak Korean for a Korean company. That's a fact. I know one French guy who works for Naver and he speaks perfect Korean. Otherwise, all my other friends work for international companies or somewhere where English is required. But even if English is required, your day-to-day life would be in Korean if you work for a Korean company, in all logic.
Another question from Elodie, how accessible are internships in Korea when you're a student and English speaker? Perhaps.
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know many interns, foreign interns here. Our members, actually, at the chamber, we have 450 members, and a few of them take on foreign interns. So we have some import-export companies. We have the news outlet like Yonhap, French or English, they hire sometimes interns. So there are some of them, but I'm not sure. I think you have to target well, or maybe target also the international. You can target Korean companies, but the international departments or the ones that have maybe some settlements in Europe. I always say that also to work in Korea, a good start also is to start like maybe in a company in Europe, basically a Korean branch in Europe, or a French company that might want to develop in the Korean market, and then you can basically you can sell to your boss a VIE project. And actually, the French chamber, if you are interested in the VIE contract type, so for those who don't know, these are called international volunteership, and it's like a 2 years contract. It's really suited for young professionals. And it's really hard to get them from the CV Web website. Actually, some of the offers are published because it's obligated to publish, but sometimes it's like already decided internally inside the company. So maybe look at the companies who hire VIE often, and maybe try to enter their French HQ or something, and then later on you can. I think you have a greater chance to have international experience if you already have this experience at this company before.
And I just wanted to add just a personal anecdote. Maybe this was a long time ago, over 10 years ago. I was looking for an internship in Korea as a part of my SeungPyo course, and I found one using one of these websites. Oriane actually just posted here. I think I went on the Chamber of Commerce website, looked at the list of companies that existed. I started sending them emails like crazy. And there was this one company, it still exists, and since then has become really big. It's a digital marketing company. And the owners are, there's a French owner and a Korean owner. So they quite liked my profile and they took me on as a summer intern. So
It's Asians.
yes, I did one of my first
Yeah.
internships
Asians
as
hire a lot of interns.
yeah. So you can find things if you look hard. But definitely if you're a French citizen, like a VU or VIA is definitely really interesting. There's still a lot of them in my entourage, and I think you can do it till your late 20s. So if you're still young, you can look that up.
We have a question from Jocelyn. What would be the experience for someone not speaking Korean in terms of daily life, cultural life, socialization, since he might come over, have a transfer scheme to Seoul for 1 or 2 years? I'd say that the neighborhood that Yena and Ariane both mentioned, Itaewon, which is a neighborhood, very central neighborhood in Korea. There's a lot of international community out there. People do normally conversate in English as well. So on a daily life basis, you wouldn't feel any distance socializing in that specific neighborhood in Korea.
Yeah, I think if you can just order food, get a taxi, and like do like basic daily Korean, that's enough to live. I think, in my opinion, I do know quite a few foreigners, and that's just how they get around. And it's enough. It's enough if you learn the basics, maybe like A2 level or something.
Yeah, and for those who don't speak and want to be integrated, we have a big foreign community here as well. And at the chamber or any other, we have French Tech, which is here. We have the CEFC, le Cercle des Entrepreneurs Francophones en Corée. So we have many associations. The French founders are here also. So you can join any of these network, and they have networking events that are fully in English or in French, and you can get a social life also without necessarily speaking Korean, because we have a very dynamic community.
And please do drop us an email at our Korean alumni official Gmail that I just shared at the chat. So what we try to do is that we try to centralize as many internship offers as possible within our own alumni organization, so that any interested alumnus will be able to benefit from the list of interesting internship offers here in Seoul. So please do get in touch with us, don't hesitate. And we have another question from Tasnim. How would you get an internship at the French administration if there is no official internship offers? Oh, complicated question. Oh, Yena.
I think the best is like the VIA thing that exists. I don't think there are a lot of internship offers in general for things like embassies. Correct me if I'm wrong, Oriane, you probably know more than me. And I don't think it's easy for you to just write emails to people. You can try en mode candidature spontanée, mais generally this is it's like the public civil sector, they have rules about these things. So I think it's quite unlikely, unless they've published an offer, that there would be a position behind it. So you shouldn't get your hopes up too high.
I think the French embassy, maybe they have 4 or 5 interns, and they have one at La Défense, one at the communication team. So either you're lucky and you get, you can do spontané. Actually, they are more flexible than we might think. The system is very very strict for the one who went through Quai d'Orsay and who are on the state contract. But actually, the embassy, they hire more and more on a local contract base. And they have actually quite a lot of flexibility when it comes to internship and local contracts, from my experience in there.
And needless to mention that South Korea tries to promote itself as a favored destination for entrepreneurship. So there's a lot of government grants when it comes to starting up your own company if you have a great business proposal, business idea in South Korea. And there are lots of accelerators or Korean VCs that are absolutely interested in having this European market penetration. So for future startup founders and owners and the owners of unicorn startups, South Korea is very much open for acquiring new talents and amazing talents all around the globe.
And if any of you is around in Seoul in August, the Kotra is organizing, the Kotra is the equivalent of Business France to promote investment, foreign investment in Korea. And they organize their foreign invested job fair at the COEX every year, and it will be end of August. So the date is not great. I think it's 21st of August to 26th of August. So with FKCI, I think we are thinking of promoting the participation of foreign companies there, and they have a lot of. It's basically a big forum with a lot of offers. It's more for Koreans who speak English, but I think there are opportunities for foreigners as well in there.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any last burning questions? Oh, there's a hand raised by.
Yeah, I do have a question. Hello, thank you so much for everything that you said. It was more of a question related to visa and like how do you deal with the instability of knowing that at some point you might not get a visa renewed, or how does it also impact your choices about changing careers? Because you know that if you have a job in a certain place, then you have the visa, but if you want to change a place, then there's a chance that you might lose this visa. So how do you deal with that and like continue growing in your career having that in mind?
Yeah, it's like one of the most important difficulties here. At the beginning there are different solutions for the visa. So I was on a student visa, then I was on a working holiday. So working holiday is quite flexible, it's nice, and it's not like in Canada where it's a lottery because so many people ask for it. Actually the quota is not met, so you get automatically a working holiday visa basically if you ask for it. And then you must be lucky enough to have a company who can sponsor the visa. So there's a 20% quota for foreigners in Korea established companies. So sometimes they might have this limit, but actually when there's a visa issue, you can ask also the FKCCI because we can help in that matter. We can also even do a portage salarial, and we can sponsor visa actually for foreign companies who cannot, who are not met in the quota. So actually we are helping a lot. We have some kind of facilities to get it. But that's true that currently I'm under E7 visa and I'm tied to my employer. So if I quit, I don't have visa anymore. But after 2 years of getting this visa and having a local work experience with a local contract, so for example, VIE doesn't count. So VIE is I think it's D42. I think it's like training visa. There's a kind of a weird agreement between Korea and France on that. So Korea considers that you're an intern and they don't value your VIE experience as a local experience in here. So it doesn't count when you want to ask, for example, for permanent residency. VIE won't count. So you have to be careful about that. And I think best option is to have E7 visa. And then after 2 years of E7, if you can be eligible to the permanent visa. So I think it's the F42 or F47. I forgot. So you have different types of permanent, but it's the F4 something. It's permanent residency. And you have a quota. After this, you have a quota of points. It's a very selective immigration. So they look at your salary and they change the system a little bit. So they give you points depending on your level of salary. If you have the topic, which is the official Korean language test, it's giving you points. You can do the KEEP, is like it's a Korean educational program basically on teaching you like basic laws and rules in Korea. And you take classes for 2 months and then you get points basically to show that you're a good citizen and you will be well integrated. And then also it's pretty ruthless system. If you're an engineer, you get more points. If you're in social science, it's less valuable, so you get less points. If you have a master's degree, you get more points. If you have, I think, a PhD, you get more points. So it's a bit selective like this. But there's a nice website to maybe I can share it with you to know a bit better about that.
And I do believe that there is a legal aid scheme proposed by the Ministry of Justice for foreigners with legitimate reasons who wish to extend their visa. But obviously, local lawyers are always helpful when it comes to visa questions. But well, it's my first time listening to any problems related to visa. But at the same time, if you need any legal aid, you could try to reach to the Alumni Association, and there'll be some legal experts available, including myself. Yeah.
I just wanted to add to what Oriane said. She had such good concrete examples of how to deal with the system in Korea, which I think was really interesting. But in general, I can't speak for Korea because I'm a Korean citizen, but I lived in France for 12 years and I have friends who live, I mean, Korea is a diasporic nation. We're all over the place. If you want a career where you will like, try to do your own thing and become a freelancer and like, try to do a startup with no money. Like these things are difficult when you don't have the right to reside in a country. Like most of my friends who are expats work for big corporations, big law firms, big consulting firms, or it's their companies that send them to a foreign country. Like in my case, it's very rare to find, which is just a sad reality. You can't be like it's not easy to be an artist when, you can't, there are some professions that are just more difficult to be an expat in because of visas. Wherever you go in the world, I think it's the same. It will be the same if you go to the US and, whatever.
Difficult to be citizen of the world. Right. So I believe that
just one last thing on the visa. Also, the government announced two new types of visa, the digital nomad visa. So I think that could be really interesting for some of you. If you're, for example,
That's so modern.
Like, yeah, it's so basically you can work, you get a 1-year visa if you are fully remote, and if you negotiate a remote year with your employer, and if you're employed abroad, Korea, you can apply for the digital visa. So we don't know yet the details of the implementation. So but you might check it out. And there's the K-culture visa, but I think this is for those who go to K-pop dance schools or stuff like this. So I don't know if it's not a work-related visa. So
and we love creators, it seems. All right. Thank you very much. I would leave the floor to Yena.
Thank you very much, SeungPyo. Thank you, Yena and Oriane. I think it was a very brilliant time. We learned a lot, especially how to work on language, on Korean language in SeungPyo. Doing exchange program in a South Korean university can really help, and then try all opportunities with companies that work between South Korea and Europe, and most importantly to register to our website, to the South Korea page, in which if we are aware there are opportunities, we can also maybe put some contact there. And so thank you for your participation. It's such a good an extraordinary thing to see how many students and alumni are interested in pursuing a career in South Korea. So good luck, and I think that SeungPyo Hong with the South Korea chapter can be also available if you have specific questions in the future. So thank you very much to all of you for being here, and hopefully see you sometime in Seoul.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.